Hello everyone. Today I'm going to do a bit of a breakdown of how to recreate the Squid Game titles. So, first create your composition, call it whatever you want and the size you want. Then we're going to add a black background by going up to Layer, New, Solid and making it black. Then I like to lock this layer so I can't accidentally move it, and then I'm going to shy it as well just to keep everything organised. You can show and hide the layers which you've shied by clicking this button, and it keeps everything a bit more organised when you've got a lot of layers like we're going to have. So now we're going to add the screenshots we've got of the first and the second logos so that we can trace over them. Here I'm using the ellipse tool and I'm changing the size of it with the size option rather than scale, because this ensures that all the strokes are the same width, and that's quite important so that everything joins up nicely. Then I'm going to duplicate this for the bottom circle. To create a triangle, use the polygon shape tool, and under this drop down you can change the number of sides to 3 to make a triangle. Similarly, change the size rather than the scale. I'm creating this square with straight lines rather than using the square tool because of the way it's been animated. Now we'll do the same for the second part of the logo. You'll notice I've used different colours. This just keeps everything a bit more organised, especially because we've got a lot of layers. Also, changing the colour of the layers can keep things organised as well. For this second logo, you might have noticed the Squid Game title slowly increases in size. So here I'm using a stroke width of 40 rather than 30. After doing this, I've created a null object and paired all these shapes to the null object. And then I'm going to decrease the size by a quarter down to 75%. This is because 30 is 75% of 40. So now everything has the same size stroke. So now you should be left with all these shapes ready to animate. The first thing we're going to do is these circles here. I've hidden everything else just to make it clearer for me. First I'll use these guides to help us position the paths that are going to join up the circles. Using Command R brings up these rulers, and then you can drag down guides from them. The path should then snap to the guides to make it nice and neat. I'm also drawing the in-between paths in a different colour again. And now I've hidden them so we can focus on this circle. 95% of the effect used here is with an effect called Trim Paths. But you'll see at the end there's subtle effects we can add which really finish off this effect nicely. Trim Paths, if you don't already know about it, it basically shows and hides part of a shape along its path. So here for the circle we need it to start disappearing from the bottom. So by using the offset value, we can change where this starts and ends from. We'll keyframe the start parameter to go from 0 to 100, and with a bit of nice easing, it already looks quite good. Press F9 to easy ease, and then you can play around with it even more if you like. We'll do the same thing on this horizontal line, but we'll also keyframe the line to come in rather than just go off. By looking at the original, we can gauge the speed of it a bit. You'll notice that the lines go into the corner, stop slightly, and then come out of that corner again. This is why I made it as 2 separate lines, just so it's a bit easier. Quick tip, if you've got a number of keyframes on different layers like this, and you want to increase or decrease the speed of all of them, highlight them all and hold down Alt, and then you can drag them all and they'll proportionately change the length. You'll see here I've highlighted these paths we've used and changed the colour of the strokes by using the eyedropper tool from the screenshot we had at the start, and playing it shows we're starting to get somewhere. Now for the triangle, they've done it slightly differently. Here you'll see I've duplicated the big triangle and I've used a mask to just show the very bottom of it for one of the layers. For the triangle on top, I've animated its size so it goes from large to small, as well as its position to move into the bottom corner. When we're easing these, make sure they're exactly the same so that the motion looks like it's moving along the path nicely. When the small triangle moves over to the left, I've just masked off the base of it. And here we have the effect they've used. We can then delete the blue triangle. The only other technique you'll see here is the scaling of the circles, which with some nice easing creates a simple but nice looking effect. Using this trim paths technique, you can recreate the rest of the animation. It takes a bit of time, but go through each section one by one and you'll do it easily. The only sort of difficult part is this 7 looking shape. Using some masking will allow you to create that movement, whereas just using trim paths you won't be able to get the angle on the path unless someone knows how to do it. Simply animate a mask which reveals the shape. To make the circle, triangle and square change colour, you'll simply want to add a keyframe to the colour of the stroke and then another keyframe a few seconds later with a different colour. Again, you can use the eyedropper to get the right colour from your screenshot. Okay, great. So now we've got something which looks pretty good. We've got the main effect there. Now we're going to add the last couple of effects to make it look perfect. Firstly, I'm going to add some shadows to certain shapes by using the drop shadow effect and then rearranging things on top of each other so that the right things cast the right shadows onto the right objects. Have a watch back of the original logo so you can see what needs doing. The next effect we're going to add is this subtle chromatic aberration effect. If you notice in the original, there's some slight red and green sections on the edges of the shapes, especially when they move. So to recreate this, what we're going to do is pre-comp all our animation and then duplicate it in the project panel rather than in the timeline. This is important because if you duplicate in the timeline, then any changes you make will affect all those comps. So once we've duplicated in the project panel, simply drag it onto the timeline and then you can go in and we're going to delete all the shadow effects that we've used. If we kept the shadows, their colour will be changed by this fill effect that we're going to add. Using this effect, change it to the red, make sure this layer is below our main composition. We'll then add the echo effect, and by changing the echo time, this will affect how far away the reds are to the white, or in other words, how big and obvious this effect is. Once you're happy with how it looks, we'll duplicate that again. You don't have to do this in the project window, and change the colour to green, but you'll also want to change the negative number that you've used to a positive number. This will make sure it's the same size on each side. The next thing we're going to add is some opacity so that our first shape fades on, and also a Gaussian blur so that it goes from blurry to not blurry at the start. I've also added some opacity at the end so that it fades out, and you can also duplicate that layer and isolate the red shapes so that they fade out slightly later. I've done this quite lazily by using a colour keyer, but you should probably go in, duplicate the comp in the project panel and go in and delete everything else but those shapes, and then you can fade them out slightly later. And there we have it. So give it a go yourself, and if you're feeling adventurous, try it in your own text. That'd be really cool to see. I hope you found this useful. I'd love to hear your feedback. Do subscribe and comment, and let me know if there's any other breakdowns you want me to do. And you can follow me on my Instagram. Thank you, and see you in the next one.